What is hyperestrogenism? Hyperestrogenism is a high concentration of estrogens in the body. And while it can be for different reasons, as we can see there, we know that to balance estrogens, which increase when we have egg production and ovulation, we can have hyperestrogenism when estrogens start to rise in the middle of the menstrual cycle and progesterone does not increase. That is to say, when there is a deficiency of progesterone, estrogens seem to wait for progesterone to arrive in order to produce ovulation and the release of the egg in the form of menstruation if there is no fertilization. So it is important to regulate progesterone levels. In fact, it is one of the reasons why sometimes we do not get pregnant, that decrease in progesterone. And it is one of the reasons why we have very long cycles. The excess production of estrogens, which is also quite common, if we have a mismatch in the metabolism of estrogens, there is an enzyme called aromatase, which regulates that conversion between testosterone and estrogens. We will also produce an excessive amount of estrogens. It may be that estrogens are produced in normal amounts, but that the elimination of those estrogens from our body is deficient. That is to say, our liver, mainly the intestine, liver, and kidney, is an important axis, but our liver is mainly responsible, through those fats we mentioned at the beginning, for the metabolism of hormones. If we have a liver overload because we have permeability in the intestine, which we will see later, that liver will not be able to metabolize and expel the excess estrogens. So liver detoxifications are very important, which I will comment on later. And something we need to keep in mind is exogenous estrogens, that is what we know as endocrine disruptors, which can be found in many places, but especially in plastics, pesticides, and herbicides. Be careful with cosmetics, makeup, and creams. There are also many that contain endocrine disruptors in their composition. And that is somewhat what is currently causing significant imbalance. So the excess of estrogens will cause those pathologies at the menstrual level, that pain, the formation of cysts, fibroids, and hormone-dependent oncological diseases. We need to assist that process and the metabolism of estrogens. And I have already mentioned a bit about all this. Where are we going to find those endocrine disruptors, or those xenoestrogens, as they are called? Some foods have a quite large hormonal load, such as mainly dairy products. In the end, it comes from the udders of a lactating animal. It is normal for the hormonal load to be large if we want to reduce that menstrual symptomatology and the suffering from cysts, fibroids, and oncological issues. The reduction of dairy must be essential, apart from the inflammation and intestinal permeability that caseins will produce. But we are talking about hormones. We must reduce dairy consumption. And be careful with the purchase of eggs and some meats. Please buy organic eggs. And meat can also be related to intestinal dysbiosis. What I was saying, everything starts in the intestine. Now we will see how a healthy intestine should be, the liver, and the more obesity, the more overweight, the more fat accumulation. We have said that estrogens, fats, and hormones are fats. The more fat we have accumulated, the more hormones we will accumulate. The intestine. In all the presentations we make on micronutrition, we are clear about the intestine. It is the key piece. It is the first organ we must always treat, always, no matter the pathology being addressed. When a patient comes to the consultation for whatever reason, the first thing I do is treat their intestine and regulate that microbiota. The microbiota is our army, and it must be functioning correctly for our body to work well. So there are bacteria and there are fungi like Candida. There are bacteria like Clostridium that will disrupt that hormonal metabolism, will disrupt excretion, and will cause the absorption of estrogens to be greater at the intestinal level. We need to regulate the microdiet for everything, but also for hormonal health. That is what I was telling you about a healthy intestine. The increase in intestinal permeability is that separation of the cells of the intestine. The enterocytes, which are the cells of the intestine, with the hand, because it looks quite good, must have our micropores, right? For the absorption of nutrients with all the villi. If those intestinal cells separate, an increase in the intestinal community occurs. the entry into the bloodstream, then they will go to the liver, to the rest of the body, will be massive, that is to say, all kinds of antigens, microorganisms, and metabolic excretions that must be eliminated will enter the bloodstream. So it is very important to repair the intestinal wall. Intestinal permeability should not be increased. It is very, very, very important that the first step is to treat the intestine so that there are no immune system manifestations, so that nutrient absorption is correct, and so that we can digest properly. We always talk about a healthy intestine, and it is the key to all diseases. Even if the reason is a headache, the intestine must be treated. We know that the entire digestive mucosa is filled with neurons from the nervous system, so we will also see nutrients for the nervous system later. But if we do not address the intestine, that vagus nerve that runs through the digestive mucosa will be altered. Therefore, we will not achieve results in symptoms such as anxiety, nervousness, and lack of sleep. Sleep, serotonin, and melatonin depend on intestinal production. The intestine needs to be addressed,